It continues to be one of my most enjoyable RTS and grand strategy titles. At this point, I've done a lot of different play sessions with Sins of a Solar Empire 2, and one of the main reasons for this is, well, aside from it being so fun and really having some amazing scale, is the sheer customizability of the sessions. And we'll talk about all of that in this video. So right here on the screen, I've just entered a brand new system here, brand new planetary body, and we're taking down the hostiles that are protecting this area. Our goal is to take this world and colonizing it, making it our central homeworld. Today I'm playing as the Visari Exodus, a different faction to who I normally play. I normally play the Tech or the TEC, and I wanted to try something a little bit different. Now, this video is sponsored by Stardock, so my thanks to them for that. Do check out the links in the video description, and also do be aware that as of the publication date of this video, there is an ongoing Steam sale, so you'll be able to get this game for a very nice discount. Now, at the start of this video, you saw a Durasol excavator arrive into orbit around this planetary body. And this is a particularly interesting ship, and that's because it's rather unique to the Visari race. So the excavator is a floating city. Much of the Visari race don't reside on planets, at least they didn't, and they move around in space in these massive, huge ships. And yes, that means right here I didn't start with a planet already occupied. Instead, I actually had to take one. All working out very well though, as those hostiles were relatively easy to deal with. So right here is one of the features I really like about Sins of a Solar Empire, and that is the zoom feature. Zooming right out from the current planet and to check in the entire system as a whole. You can see the pathways, the nodes that allow me to transition between the current planetary body and the other ones. There's a little white line off to the left of the screen there, and another one slightly towards the bottom. Before we do anything, I've actually paused the timer here. We're going to start some building. We need to build a factory so I can build some ships. I might put a fleet beacon down as well, actually, whilst we're at it. Also going to need to have some civilian bases in orbit around the planet and some military bases. What they do is allow us to conduct both civilian and military research. There's a number of ways to win this game, to complete your particular session. That will depend on what goals have been set for you by the mission, or if you set up a custom game, which objectives you've set for yourself. In this case, I need to defeat the hostile homeworld. Likewise, if my homeworld is lost, if it comes under attack and is conquered, I will lose the game. That means it's all important to build a whole load of ships, both for defense as well as offense. We're going to build a few scouts so they can go out and explore whilst I'm doing this, and then we're going to send some frigates in the queue for construction. Now, we also have some limitations on the size of the fleet we can have, and this is determined by the amount of research we've conducted into warfare. The higher our warfare research, the more we can expand the size of our fleet. So yeah, you can see here that our military supply is limited, and we can go here into warfare research, and you can see we need some additional military bases in order to improve that. So we just go here. You can see, oh, we're not, are we? Yeah, there we go. We just pop down a few of these military research bases. One there will do. And you'll see that we can now conduct the next level of Empire and Warfare research. Each tier of research allows us to unlock additional perks, such as in this case some new ships, or which I'm particularly after, is the supplies, meaning we can increase the size of our fleet. Now at this point, our scouts have surveyed a sufficient number of planets and other bodies, and it's time for us to move on out and try and expand our empire. Currently, we're just limited to the homeworld. We're going to go out and capture one of these large asteroids. We just need to destroy the hostiles around this. Now, the white-coloured hostiles that you're seeing here, these are what we can class as minor factions, and they are a sort of power base in the overall gameplay session here, but they're not a significant one. There is just one other major faction in our empire. They're coloured orange, and they are our main empire, our main enemy rather, and they're the ones that we're going to need to ultimately defeat. The asteroids and the other planets that we can discover will all, once colonised, provide us additional resources for our empire. We can see there's 2 asteroids here off to the side of our current homeworld, and further out there is another planet. So want to make sure I've got enough ships together, and we're going to go and capture that world, and we'll have an additional world that will be able to provide us with resources. And you can see right there, we've already captured that asteroid. Okay, so we're heading on over to the other world, and there's some more hostiles here. We're going to need to take care of them. We've got a nice fleet of frigates, as you can see here. They're doing very well, especially if we focus our fire on specific hostiles. I usually like to try and take out one at a time, although you can leave these fleets to their own devices. I like to try and manage them at least a little bit. Okay, we're nearly there. We should have another frozen world to actually inhabit, although must point out here, we will need to conduct some research to be able to occupy that planet, because you can see this is an Arctic world, and by default you can't actually occupy these. You will need to conduct the relevant research. I do really like the way these worlds look, really nice. You'll also from time to time find relics and other things like this, resources that you can gather once we've defeated the defense around it. There's some derelict loot there, and once we send the capital ship over toward it, we will actually capture it. Now, after around about 25 minutes into this play session, I realised I was likely going to face some pretty profound difficulties, and that's largely due to the way this system is organised. Every time you start a new game, you'll get a new layout for the system that you're inside of, and there is orbits here. These planets will move around. In this particular case, I don't think they're going to move anywhere near fast enough. You can see that my little empire here, the 3 red circles, is somewhat isolated. There's only one way out and one way in. We go back to the map for a second here. I'm going to pause it and you can see exactly what I mean. So down at the bottom there is my growing empire, and we've got one white line, one single exit point to get to the other side of the system. And I suspected this might very well likely be a real problem for 2 different reasons. Firstly, the enemy, marked by the orange circles off to the right, occupied 4 worlds already, so they're already moving faster than me. And secondly, they've got a lot more resources over their side than I've got on my side. So that meant I'd need to get out of here as fast as possible, hopefully taking that planet there, which would hopefully I could use as a staging ground to move further into the system. But you know, there's a bit of a risk with that, because that planet is effectively a choke point. It's the only route towards my homeworld, and it's very, very likely that the enemies are going to soon start approaching in that direction, and then doing so en masse. So knowing this, I wanted to go over there and capture that world as soon as possible, and then start building up a fleet and defensive around that world, and using it as a staging ground to move further on out, hopefully eventually taking the enemy homeworld. Ultimately, this is all going to come down to speed though, and there is a fundamental problem here. Currently, I'm limited by the resources I've got available. Currently, just 3 worlds, and that means I've got a limited number of military bases I can build around my worlds, which in turn will impact the size of the fleet I can generate and the speed at which I can do that. Okay, so as you can see, I have managed to obtain that planet. That means I'm using it as a staging ground and now moving outwards. But where to go first? It looks like there's a number of asteroids over this direction. Preferably I would prefer a planet, because they really do give better resources, but again I'm very much limited. And over to the right you can see that the enemy empire is expanding ever outwards and continuing to move towards me. With that in mind, I thought I'd better act quick. It'd be a smart move to head on out and try and capture the next planet along. I've got a very small fleet here, one that should be capable of that, but unfortunately too slow. The enemy hostiles have arrived, and they brought with them a small fleet of frigates and a capital ship as well. Now fortunately I do have some defences here. I've got a load of missiles set up. You can see them firing at their purple volleys towards the hostiles, and some of my other fleets are now moving towards the hostiles trying to engage. But just look at the sheer amount of firepower coming towards me. So this was a very quick session up until this point, and the enemy was obviously very, very well prepared indeed. So yes, things did unfold as I was expecting. This planet did become the choke point, and I also realised at this point it was going to be quite difficult for me to move on further, because I'm going to have to hold this world. That means constantly defending it, and with no other access and route outwards, I'm kind of stuck defending this world without the ability to move onwards and claim other resources. Fortunately, given a bit of time, I managed to send this particular invasion back in. And, I thought that a capital ship was going to escape, but at the last minute, just as it was about to jump, you can see I finally managed to destroy it. But that's not where things ended. I kept getting one invasion after another. Fortunately, I was able to repel each of those, and over time I managed to build a decent amount of defence, and was also able to, use this area as a staging ground as I initially intended, thereby building a pretty impressive fleet. But that did take quite a bit of time and quite a lot of resources. And that meant that, yes, eventually I was able to break into enemy territory and kind of take down their front lines. That wasn't where things ended though, because obviously this was just the start, and yeah, despite me thinking initially this was going to be a pretty easy and pretty rapid session, it turned out not to be the case. And this, for me, is one of the primary reasons I really do enjoy Sins of a Solar Empire 2 so much. It really is that unpredictable element to it, where things just feel very dynamic, constantly evolving, and you just don't know what the enemy are going to do, and yeah, that just keeps things really interesting. So, for those of you who are very familiar with Sins of a Solar Empire 2, you'll probably be bang up to date with what's going on with everything that we've seen so far. But for those of you who may be a little bit unfamiliar with it, I'd like to talk just briefly about the game as a whole, giving you a little bit of an overview and insight that you may not have otherwise picked up from looking at the gameplay. And the reason I didn't do this at the start of the video is because, well, I've discussed this extensively in previous videos. But for those of you who haven't seen those videos, I feel it's kind of worth revisiting the subjects here, at least just briefly. So one of the things that really does keep this game quite distinct from many of the other grand strategy titles out there is the hybrid nature of the 4X and RTS gameplay. It's something that is pretty much unique to Sins of a Solar Empire. It's what some actually class as RT4X. And it's this which kind of leads to a big part of the dynamic unpredictability of the gameplay that I spoke about earlier. And this isn't unpredictability in a bad way. This is unpredictability in the sense that, well, as you see in the real world, you just never know what the enemy is going to do next. You can prepare for it, you can strategize for it, and ultimately you can hopefully overcome, because likewise, the enemy doesn't really know what you're going to do. This is all bolstered by the fact that there is an asymmetric design to the gameplay, specifically with its factions, which make them more distinct in both gameplay mechanics as well as their narrative identity. For example, the tech emphasizes trade and economic development, requiring players to establish commercial networks to fund their military efforts. And in contrast, the Visari begin with the immediate need to capture their first planet, as we saw at the beginning of this video. And this means for the Visari there's less an immediate need or concern for credit accumulation in the early parts of the game, and that reflects their status as desperate refugees. I do think that if you're a fan of traditional 4X games that's explore, expand, exploit and exterminate, you're going to find a lot to appreciate in Sins of a Solar Empire 2's strategic layer. The game really does embrace a methodical empire building that defines the genre, but also allows players to explore star systems, establish colonies on diverse planets, develop resource extraction and production of infrastructure as well, and research a whole load of different technologies. The diplomatic system provides multiple avenues for interaction with other factions as well, from formal alliances to covert operations. Meanwhile, real-time strategy fans will likely find Sins of a Solar Empire's 2 tactical combat layer particularly engaging. It's got a lot of emphasis there on the fleet compositions, positioning and special abilities as well, and the game features multiple ship classes with distinct roles, from nimble corvettes designed for harassment to mighty and huge powerful capital ships, as well as the huge titans, and all of these really do serve as fleet centerpieces. All of this set up against the backdrop of a dynamic galaxy where the environment you're actually playing within does change. The orbits of the planets move around, meaning that the connections between the different worlds will change over time, and this will have a dramatic impact upon the gameplay and the strategies that you're going to need to plan. Just keep in mind that the way this played out for me, I was kind of stuck in a dead end there with that one way in and one way out, and that really did have a heavy impact on how I had to play that session out, and things really didn't go as I intended, and I really needed to adapt my strategy on the fly there. So that's Sins of a Solar Empire 2. Do check out the link to the video description. There is a Steam sale on at the moment as you're watching this video, so perhaps take advantage of that. My thanks again to Stardock for sponsoring this video. Do take care, and I'll catch you next time.